Samuel, for one of my mistakes already became obvious, huh? Morning, church. Glad you're here. Wonderful place to be. I think I agree with Marshall. If this isn't the center of the earth, it's a great place to be today. Get your Bibles. No, we're going to do something different again. I want you today, when we say this, you put your name in the blank, okay? We'll just read it together and you put your name in the blank. All right, here we go. My name is Jerry. Next. I'm a sinner worthy of death, but I am saved by grace. All right. We're looking at Jesus is. Jesus is to different people. Ultimately, the question is who Jesus is to us. I find it interesting every time I pick up the Gospels to read any 2 or 3 chapters, how much Jesus interacted with people. He wanted more than anything in this world to have a relationship with people that would change their lives. He ate with people that were, quote, awful sinners like Matthew, like Zacchaeus. In full view of everything, it's as if the whole world could look on him and see him at that moment. He ate today with what would be the equivalent of pimps, prostitutes, and crackheads. Jesus, as a young rabbi, would have been said, he's acceptable. I mean, he's a good guy. You know, rabbis didn't, according to history, they didn't really come into their own until they were about 30 years of old. So that's the case with Jesus. And so they would have looked at him and said, you know, yeah, he's all right. He's coming along. So why would anybody make friends with bad people? Why would you jeopardize your position as a rabbi? Well, we already know the answer to that, though the people around him didn't understand. They were usually preached at, rebuked, criticized, mocking. That's what you did to these outcasts and these sinful people, but not Jesus. Jesus sitting around at a table, enjoying a meal with these people, that would have been tabloid material. If they'd had a checkout at the supermarket, it might have looked like this. Jesus caught in the act of actually eating with sinful people. Pharisees believe this to be proof Jesus can't be the Son of God. And then finally, how to stay righteous, details on page 5. This would have been what they would have written and said about him. Healthy people don't need a doctor. The sick need a doctor. Jesus, in every case, has tried to say, we are the sick people of the world, all of us. We need the great physician. That's why he spent his time with the needy, the helpless, the depraved, the outcast, the crippled, the blind, the deaf, the demon-possessed. That's why he spent all of this time, because that's the ones he came to seek and to save. Now, people could not rise up to his level. Jesus was pure and holy and sinless. And so Jesus got down into the ditch with them, with us. Because we could never have made it up, but he condescended way below who he was. He wasn't out to prove how bad people were, how good people were. He wanted to offer them hope. When you see somebody in the world, next time that you see that's different, you assume their values are different. You look at them, remember, some of those people have no hope. Jesus wasn't just a friend of sinners. He's the only friend we have. Why is that? Because all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. That's why the personal need. You don't have to be good to be a friend of Jesus. You just have to be honest, right? I don't care if you're in NA, AA, in the church, whatever you're in, you got to be honest. If you're not honest, you're just going to truck on down the road and nothing will change in your life. A major tragedy of our 21st century is for something our default go-to for our culture, maybe even the world culture, is that God the Father is what? How do they view him? How does the world view Jesus? Angry, vengeful, looking to punish. Why do they get this? I sat around and tried to think, and I came up with all sorts of scenarios, chapter 1 through 50 of Jerry. I don't really know. Maybe it's because they just want to live that way. Maybe it's because of self-guilt. But if you look at the world and ask people, what do you think of God? Some of them are going to say, I don't want anything to be part of that. That God is hateful. Our world would be at its very best if they could finally see God through the eyes of Jesus. Jesus came, he worked so hard to get people to see who his Father was. He came to seek and save the lost. Does that say anything to you? Well, there's no glass here, I thought. Jesus came to seek and save the lost. Does that say anything to you? It should say everything. We should be like that old Toyota commercial. Whoa, 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 what a feeling. It's way more than that. Jesus came to seek and save everyone sitting on the pew this morning. Everyone outside the walls of this building, outside of this town, outside the whole world. He came to search out and find us. He would have looked for you if you were the only one here. In our text, there's a pack of vigilantes. They drag a woman before Jesus. I'm going to say this now because I find it interesting. They drag a woman caught in the act of adultery. They drag her to Jesus. My question is, where is the man? It takes two to tango. Now, I don't assume for a moment that Jesus was going to allow himself to get down in that quagmire, so he just sidesteps it. They all know that anyway. Jesus didn't throw stones. He didn't blush. He didn't have a funny look on his face. He didn't gasp in holy horror. Jesus bent down. They've asked him that. They brought the woman. They said, what do you want us to do? Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. They kept questioning. So he's down, he's writing with his finger, and they're questioning. Then he straightens up, and he says, if any one of you is without sin, let him be the first to throw a stone at her. And he stoops down again to write. Now, I don't know what he wrote. You don't either. Maybe he wrote down some of the commandments. Maybe he just wrote down some of the most obvious sins. You ever lie? You ever steal? I don't know what he wrote down. But here's what the text says. At this, those who heard, it wasn't what he wrote, unless you say, well, okay, they heard through the writing, but what he heard, they began to go away one at a time, the older ones first, until Jesus was left with the woman standing there. Jesus straightens back up and asks, woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? No, sir, she said. Then neither do I condemn you. Jesus declared, go now and leave your life of sin. I don't know. You say, well, I've never committed adultery. I've never stoned anyone. You ever lie? Now, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand because it'll all have to go up. That's a rhetorical question. You ever lie? That same thing that said to stone the woman, the same covenant said this. If you find a liar, the judges must make a thorough investigation. And if the witness proves to be a liar, giving false testimony against his brother, then do to him what he intended to do to his brother. You must purge the evil from among you. There's no adultery is a big sin, and lying is this little bitty thing. These band of men that come in with such passion, they just sort of slither away like the slimy creatures they are, oldest to youngest. Isn't it amazing how age has to do with humility? Many times I've read this story. I don't know how many. I was trying to just guess this morning and I quit. But every time I read it, I find something new. It's almost every time I read the Bible scriptures, I find something new. But here is what is interesting to me. As I read it this time, I find a woman she is like the loneliest person in the world. She's in a pit and the whole world is surrounding her. She's defenseless. She has nothing to say. Whatever the reason, she's caught in the act. They have their stones ready. She's not the first one to see someone stoned, and it's just minutes until her life ends. When hope is lost, the one who has the actual right to condemn her looks at her. What does she hear? She hears something she never expected to hear. She's heard since they found her, you're going to die. You're going to be stoned to death. This is going to happen. It's not what she heard. I know I have the capacity, and it's more than sobering, it's frightening. I have the capacity to be a much harsher judge than Jesus himself. I can see evil. I can don my righteous robe and I can start banging on the table. As a human, I have the capacity to condemn people when God of heaven is saying, no, there's hope for him. No, she's able to be saved. No, don't do this. Can these people be saved? Rapist, human trafficker, drug lord, a person addicted? Now, if we insist on righteous judgment, we are going to be in deep kimchi. Why? Because of that little scripture in Romans 3:23, all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. So I want for people what I want for myself. I no longer want righteous judgment. That will be up to God. But what I want is them to have a relationship with Jesus. Maybe we haven't ordered thousands of deaths, but on some level, I'll guarantee you, we've all rebelled against God. And though that may not be the fundamental basic word for sin, missing the mark, it's where it starts. Missing the mark. Some people ask me, you got all your ducks in a row? Shoot, I can't even find all my ducks. How can I get them in a row? I look at people and I look at things that are happening, and I'm almost overwhelmed. The fact that Jesus is a friend of sinners, that is the best news that I can wake up to every day. Maybe my sins aren't as obvious, but they'll kill me just the same. The enemy's not bad people. Church, it's the badness that people display. Our marching orders in Ephesians chapter 6 says we don't wrestle against what? Flesh and blood, but our wrestling is with what? Principalities and powers and evil. It's a spiritual battle. That's our evil. We look at people and we see the end and you go, bang! No, excuse me. That's not what I want. the battle when we see people, we need to, it would be helpful to say, I wonder what they're really like. I wonder what's behind it all. Now, you can get to a point that you can be so bad that you won't go back. It's not that you can't be saved. You don't want to be saved. You don't want to go back from that. You're going to stay over there. When it comes to sin, the only one that had the right, he refused to do it. Now, if you're asking me, saying sin, am I saying sin doesn't matter to Jesus? I want to say this again. If you think that some way I'm suggesting that sin is unimportant to Jesus, that would really be wrong. Jesus is saying to us the same thing he said to the woman at the well. Leave your life of sin. Now, every one of us at some point in time is going to get caught up in something. We won't do it intentionally. We'll do it because our guard is down, because we're not thinking. But I'm talking about a lifestyle of sin. So he says to the woman, stop living the lifestyle you were living. We can't continue to live a life of sin. Boy, we've got to take all of the power that we can muster with the Spirit of God living in us. And church, we've got to push back. We need help. We need to ask a brother or sister. We need to ask. And if you have something you need to talk to and you think someone will freak out, come and I'll tell you a few brothers you can go to that won't blush. They won't go all crazy. They won't get all spun up. Maybe I just need to zip it and listen. Maybe I need to pray. Maybe I need a brotherly hug. Maybe someone needs a brotherly hug. Maybe I need to know, not just intellectually, but in my heart. Maybe I need to understand the compassion of Jesus. Now, we can be quick to write off bad people, and we can even be quick to write off ourselves. Remember, a lot of guilt is an inside job. I'm looking at people that have been freed of sin this morning. If you've been baptized into Christ and you're doing your best to be faithful to him, not perfect, just doing your best, I'm looking at sinless people. Do you believe that? Do you really believe it? I hope you do. Don't allow some things that's happened to somebody to whisper in your ear, or you get the concept from people that you're hopeless. That's garbage. That's the devil's talk. As we begin to understand Jesus, one of the things that will occur to us is we'll find that there's a need inside to change. Now, here's some steps that I've gone through as a young man, all right? The first one is, I'm a good person and I'm justified in criticizing bad people. Now, I didn't say that. I probably wouldn't have spelled it out that way, but that's basically what I did. I grew up hearing people condemned a lot. Well, you know, they did this. Really? And then step two is, well, I should show compassion. Step three, I need mercy as much as the next person needs mercy. Jesus, in his eternal plan, had just one shot to save us. And he showed us what love is. Love is sacrificial. Love is hard. People said, oh, I just love everybody. Really? Come and talk to me. I'll find you people you don't love. Some people are hard to love. Now, I know I'm not that case, but I know some people are hard to love. All right. We need to make sure sinners, when they come through the door of any assembly we have or any occasion we have, they feel absolutely, totally welcome. We must make that a priority. One beggar telling another beggar where to find bread. Rusty has said that, and I've never forgotten. Often he says it after a baptism. He'll say to that person, remember, you are a beggar telling another beggar where to find bread. I'll put a couple more words with it. The church is a bucket load of beggars whose job it is to tell beggars how we got the bread of life. That's our job. That's all we have to do. We don't have to go and so I haven't got this thing memorized and I can't tell everybody. Tell him what he's done for you. Did he do anything for you? Are you free of sin? Do you actually feel good because you're free of sin? It's okay to feel. I love this passage. Highlight this. Maybe this would be a good one to put on your refrigerator. And we with unveiled faces. Don't worry about that. It has to do with the previous verse. But all reflect the Lord's glory, are being transformed into his likeness. Getting faster and faster with ever increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who's what? What's living in us? The Spirit. The transformation takes place in our life because as we've been baptized, we get the gift of the Spirit, and the Spirit lives inside us. We are its temple. Do not conform. He's basically, don't be like the world, but be transformed. How, church? By the renewing of your mind. That's got to start first, right? Above anything else, that has got to start first. It starts up here because my emotions and Jerry and what I've been in the habit and what I want to do is totally different. So I got to shake it loose, break it off, and get free of it. Now, it won't be instantaneous. It won't happen immediately. It will take some time. You know, people says, I repent. It'd be nice. That's what the mind says, and that's what the determination is. But it's more of a swinging circle. And Jesus told the woman, stop your life of sin. He wasn't interested in condemning her past. He was interested in guaranteeing her future. Who starts their life deciding they're going to be a prostitute, a porn star, a pervert, a drag queen? Someone wakes up at 3 years old, they say, well, I think I'm going to be a drag queen. Really? How do we get there? Wrong choices made, we find ourselves entrapped, hopeless. Make some bad decisions and make some more and make some more, just keep making more. I don't know any different than to keep making bad decisions, and pretty soon I'm in this black world that's blacker than the deepest night, darkness, and I don't have a clue how to get out of it. I just know there's no hope. But there is. Jesus came to break the cycle of sin and condemnation. He gave every one of us in here a future. We read in our class this morning that God is the God of the living and the dead. Now, that doesn't say a lot to you unless someone says to you, you go to the doctor and say, well, you got stage 4 liver cancer. You got 2 or 3 weeks to live. Then the fact that he's the God of the dead really means everything. A preacher friend once asked me, I had a chance to work with this guy for a few years. His dad was in the army and they were in Germany. His dad died when he was about 7 and they came back to America. They didn't have any place to live, but they lived, he said, I lived in a pool hall, a bait shop, a bait shop, and a beer parlor. And he said at 7, 8 years old, I was stocking long necks. If you don't know what that is, you don't need to know about it. But in a cooler, he was stocking those things. And then he'd go run the trout lines or the fish lines before morning. He said, I always wondered why my teacher put my desk out in the room sometimes. He said, finally, someone said, you stink like fish. But anyway, I got a chance to work with this guy. If you could have seen his early pictures, if you were alive back in the 70s, you remember Charles Manson? He was the poster child for Charles Manson. He was a guy that grew up with the idea that this Jesus stuff is going to hurt you. But when Jesus finally became part of his life, he was amazing. Not because he was so great, but because Jesus was so great working in him. And he said to me one day, Jerry, you know any pimps? We're just sitting around talking. Drug dealers? No. Crackheads? No. Exotic dancers? No. Prostitutes? And I'm like, okay, where's this going? But as I look at his face, it was interesting. You can tell a lot what's in the mind sometimes by looking at the face. And he had this sad, pained look. And then he said this, neither do I know any of these people. I think that's part of our evangelism problem. Now, I might have known pimps and pushers and crackheads, but I wouldn't have known it because I didn't take the time to find out. I just trucked on through life. I preached my sermons and I went home just like everybody else. Happier than a dead pig in the sunshine. That's the way I was, just happy. By Jesus' definition, everybody that I had in my circle, we didn't need a physician. Since that time, I've tried to open my heart to people whose lives are different than mine. Not so I can pity them or rebuke them or make them into a project or there's some evangelism trophy. Just so I can learn. So I can learn to be the friend. Jesus' passion was looking for the lost, lonely souls, introducing them to God, his Father, not waiting for them to wander into the tabernacle so he could meet him, going into society to find them, never in a hurry to leave their house. I'm pretty sure I could have fit in that last one. If you invite me over to eat, I'll eat till there's nothing left, or until I, pass out from a carbohydrate-induced coma. Jesus loved to be around people. There's another thing that amazes me from this story, and that's from another perspective. We're told by sociologists that these people, and you can add a whole list, just make it as long as your arm, but they don't generally like to be around, quote, good people. But that wasn't the case with Jesus. They were eager. Remember where we started with Zacchaeus? Zacchaeus was more excited than a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. I get to go home today to be with Jesus. I get to go home. He gets to come to my home. We're going to eat together. We're going to do things together. Aren't you worried about being in the presence of Jesus? He may bring out a thing into your life that you don't want him to bring out. I want to be with Jesus. Now I want you to please listen closely, all right? Jesus didn't wink at sin. He didn't sweep it under the rug. He didn't think in any way that sin didn't exist. He wasn't in denial. Because in a few short days, a few short weeks, what's going to happen to it? They're going to beat him until he has not enough strength to carry his own cross. And finally, they're going to nail him to the cross. Now, if that looks like an excuse for sin, please explain it to me. If that looks like why he was trying to sweep away sin, explain it to me. But this is why he could say to the woman at the well, neither do I condemn you. Stop living your life of sin. He can say the same thing to us today, church. Stop living your life of sin. I'm not in the condemning business. I came to save you. So as we've used this a few times, it's really all about Jesus and bad people. I'm on the scales. For bad people, he offered freedom from emptiness. He offered compassion. He offers hope. And you know what? Here's the exciting news, and he still offers it today. So, Jesus saves bad people by his grace. The next time you doubt that, or the next time you think about it, you remember this picture. This is how much Jesus loved me and you. And the God in heaven who helped him plan that is agreeing with that and going along with that. Because if I'd been God in heaven, you wouldn't like it, because there would have been a hole all the way through the earth where Jesus was. And I'd have sucked everybody through it. But you see, that's why I'm the bad people. I'm not the one that deserves to condemn. If you're here today and you're not a child of God, Jesus loved you Calvary's worth. Now, Jesus, listen a bit closely. Jesus won't save you in a state of alienation from him. But right now, his arms are wide open. And he wants you to come into his life and be part of him. If you know what that is and you need to do that today, we'll help you. If you don't, talk to us. Let us share with you what Jesus has done for us as we stand and sing.
Though your sin